Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Woman sees the homeless man every day. One day, he slips his paper that reveals his shocking identity. A 77-year-old man, Romualdo Oroto Soprano, lived on the Brazilian streets. The Brazilian streets provided him with shelter for 35 years, which is not less than a lifetime. Many people in Brazil were aware of him, and he used to write short stories and poetry only for himself, as there was no one there to read it ever. Despite all this, he never gave up his love for writing, as it gave him strength in the darkest of times. He was fully aware of the fact that nobody would read them or publish them, but he kept on writing. Would his writing ever reach the world? Would people ever be aware of the golden words written by this homeless man? Raimundo was a book dealer and gardener. Those connections with books and nature was an old one. Being a book dealer, he lived all his life close to books, and gardening brought him close to nature. The reason behind homelessness was the dictatorship that shook the country in the 1970s. Raimundo was born in a village and shifted to São Paulo later on. Although the dictatorship in the 1970s shook the country, but it could not shake the passion for writing. He loved writing and could not even think of moving on from it. Anyone who ever walked on the Brazilian streets in São Mundo was aware of his love of writing, as he would keep all the pages close to him. To people, all those pages seemed to be just some messy papers, but for him, it was his whole life. He kept it close to his heart and never threw any piece of writing away. Shallow saw him one day, and his life took an unforgettable and surprising turn. Let's find out what Shallow did for him. Shallow saw him sitting with those pages and was curious about the content. She requested him whether she could read any of those pages. He read one of his poems for her, and it left her stunned. She could not believe what she had just heard. She was instantly sure that these words should reach the rest of the world, and made a Facebook account to share his poems and poetry to the world. She uploaded his pictures along with his writing on Facebook, and his talent garnered 1,000 followers on his Facebook page. His followers knew that he was a homeless man with heaps of talent, so they decided to help him out by providing him with different gifts that made his life a bit easier. He received love and appreciation from a lot of people, but the real surprise was something much bigger than finding 100,000 people who loved him. He found his actual family too. Raimundo's real brother saw his picture on his Facebook page and immediately recognized him. He contacted the Facebook page and got to know his location. He met Raimundo and was happily surprised to see his missing brother. After so long, both of them reunited and did not want to live a day without each other. Raimundo went to his brother's home on his invitation. So after living on the streets as a homeless man for years, Raimundo finally found his family and his real home. His brother took him to his house, and he was able to live his life like a normal person. He took showers and groomed himself. He finally did not have to worry about his next meal, as his family was there to provide him with all the luxuries of life, and of course their love. On Raimundo's new picture, we could see that he looked like a completely different man. With the help of his brother, he had groomed himself completely. His words finally reached the world, and people valued them the way they should have been valued years ago. Along with this, reuniting with his brother was the biggest miracle of his life. He was eternally grateful to Shallow, as her efforts made his life much better. We hope we all witness such miracles in our life someday. Let's move on to the next story. She stepped into the pub and glanced into the dining room to see her husband sitting with an older woman. Since the woman was in an open marriage, she was not bothered until she looked closely and realized it was her mother. The woman went to the pub with her lover and wasn't alarmed to see her husband with another woman until she recognized she was her 54-year-old mother. The Redditor Claire Green, 145, shared the horrifying experience on Reddit's relationship_advice community, seeking advice from other users on what to do next. The 34-year-old woman confessed she thought she had taken the most advantage of her open marriage until she discovered her husband's relationship with his mother. For the past 8 months, she had been living with another man. She liked men who were different from her husband, and her lover was one of them. She was fond of visiting the pub with her lover. So she went there on his day off and surprisingly spotted her husband sitting in the dining area with an older woman. Upon looking closely, she realized the woman was her mother. She could sense it wasn't just a lunch. She could read their body language. It was clear they were out on a date. After they left, she secretly entered the house and went to their bedroom. Watching her husband smiling and laughing made her realize he was delighted. She hadn't seen him this happy all her life. Feeling disgusted, she left her lover's hand and darted for the toilet to throw up. She couldn't get over the sight of her husband having a romantic lunch with her mother. "I can't help but feel betrayed by my mother and my husband," she admitted. Thinking about who made the first move made her feel even more disgusted. She had started to miss her old life after learning about the affair, but she couldn't do anything about it because she agreed to have an open marriage. Due to her curiosity, OP began to stalk her mother and husband. She parked her car on the end of the street and watched her husband coming out of his house holding his mother's hand. Once they left, she secretly entered the house and went to their bedroom. After seeing her mother's clothes hanging in the closet that once belonged to her, she felt her heart racing. Since she hadn't confronted them yet, she wrote a Reddit post to ask other Redditors how to talk to them. She confessed she could forgive her husband, but not her mother. Her feeling of resentment against her mother had settled in her heart. Mate, you effectively have left/abandoned your hubby in marriage. You are not in an open relationship at all. Redditor Swanee clarified, elaborating that the woman shouldn't feel angry just because her lifestyle doesn't suit her husband's. After all, they have been living apart for so long. Op read the comment and asked, "How does he explain to all his friends he's thrown me out and my mother has moved in?" She thought his friends Della must be feeling his mother Della was the villain in their story. Meanwhile, some subreddit suggested OP consult a therapist because she was dealing with a massive betrayal for which seeking support from friends and family wasn't enough. The Redditor also asked the OP to consult a lawyer and see how a divorce would work for her. Other Redditors also supported the idea of divorce. Do you think it's better to set boundaries beforehand when you are in an open marriage? Op admitted she and her husband was in an open relationship, and she wouldn't have any problems with her husband dating other women. But since the woman was her mother, she was disgusted and resented it. It seemed like her OP and her husband did not set any boundaries in their open marriage, which is why her husband felt no shame in dating his mother-in-law. Do you think it's better to set boundaries beforehand when you are in an open marriage? Op admitted she and her husband was in an open relationship, and she wouldn't have any problems with her husband dating other women. But since the woman was her mother, she was disgusted and resented it. It seemed like her OP and her husband did not set any boundaries in their open marriage, which is why her husband felt no shame in dating his mother-in-law. Do you think it's better to set boundaries in such relationships? Do you think OP was regretting being in an open marriage? OP poured her heart out in the Reddit post and asked other Redditors what to do next. Some people might agree her post sounded like she regretted her decision to be in an open marriage. What do you think?